Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 489 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Eilon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and an author. Our fifth book just came out. It's called Perseverance and How to Be a Great Fraternity or Sorority Alumnus. So go and pick up that book on Amazon or Barnes & Noble today. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring fraternity and sorority students together. Fun fact, I love talking about mental health because we just don't do it enough to remove all the stigma that is associated with brain health. I give a presentation on hazing one day, and a student came up to me in the audience to say how much she loved the program, but she wanted to know if there was anything I could do about the long wait times for an appointment at the counseling center. And I'm like, oh my goodness, we got to be talking about mental health much more. We need much more resources in that space. And along those lines, we have an amazing guest for you today. Brittany Richmond is a dynamic and charismatic mental health expert with over a decade of experience. Diagnosed with multiple anxiety disorders, including an impulse control disorder right after high school, she was inspired to enter the fields of counseling and psychology. Brittany has since dedicated herself to ending the stigma surrounding mental health and reaching out to as many struggling young people as possible with her story and with her voice. Brittany is a highly sought after, emotionally engaging teen mental health speaker, one of the few active women in the youth market. She has spoken on prestigious youth leadership stages nationwide, delivering her empowering message. It's called Become an Overcomer. Recently, she was honored with the 2024 Voice for Positive Change Award from the Illinois Association for Behavioral Health and Operation Snowball LLC. And her debut book, it's called Lies My Anxiety Has Told Me, became a bestseller. Beyond her professional life, Brittany cherishes her time with her husband, Zach, and her kitten, Finn, who I got a chance to see. She enjoys rocking out to 80s hair bands, my favorite, working out on her Peloton, attending St. Louis Cardinals games, and binge watching Christmas movies. She lives in Green Valley, Illinois, and lovingly refers to herself as a hot mess express. Welcome to the show, Brittany.
I am so incredibly awkward when people read my bio. Like the whole time you're talking, I'm just like, who is he talking about? That can't be me. Like that's weird. But
Yeah,
yeah, I'm
I
happy to
know
be
the
here.
feeling. I know the feeling. I'm usually hiding somewhere backstage when somebody's reading that. And I'm like,
Yes,
all right, let's forget about all that. Let's get into the program.
exactly. That's exactly what I think. I'm like, they don't need to know this.
They
Just give me
don't
the
even know this. They
microphone.
don't even care about this. Let's just talk about the program. So, listen, welcome to the show. I think it's super important that we talk about mental health. What's interesting is you were diagnosed with multiple anxiety disorders, including impulse control, right after high school. So, I'm wondering, what were those high school years like for you?
Oh my gosh, how much time do you have? This is a short podcast. So like
30 minutes?
not enough time. But no, gosh, high school was a struggle. It was a struggle. It definitely were the years where I would like to say I was struggling to find myself, but I had believed I found myself in the identity of other people. I was very much pretending to be someone that I wasn't in order to be accepted and liked and loved by my peers. And it's almost like you don't know it at the time. You're not fully aware that it's happening, but till then, when I got to college and things got exceptionally worse, that I take ownership in that. I want to be very clear, and that's what I write about in the book too, is owning, how there's freedom and ownership with that. But I definitely see why it was difficult, why young people really struggle to fit in. It's because we're trying to figure out who we are, but when we're not given the opportunity to be liked for who we are because we're not putting our best self out there, then we're pretending to be someone that we're not. And then people like that, so then we keep that facade up, but then what causes a lot of these issues like anxiety and depression and stress and worry and just not thinking that you're good enough. And that does carry over, and that manifests itself in our behavior, mental, emotional health, all the things. So
Yeah, not fitting in was definitely a struggle for me as well. I had a handful of friends in high school, and then my first semester of college was just brutal. on a campus with 30,000 students. I had no idea how to interface with 30,000 students. It was just like
Yeah.
overwhelming. And thank goodness the fraternity was there for me to pick me up. And speaking of which, you decided on Western Illinois University for
Uh-huh.
your undergraduate experience. So I'm wondering two things on the fly. Why did you choose Western Illinois, and why did you choose Chi Omega?
Ah, Chi O, love it. Shout out to all my people who are Chi Omegas who are listening or know a Chi Omega. They're fabulous. Okay, I'm just saying. But I chose Western Illinois University because it was far away but close enough, right? It was about an hour and a half from where I was. I'm from a small farm community. It's a bunch of farm people or people from Chicago. That was the combination that you had. You had city people who were trying to get away from the city, and then farm people who were trying to stay far enough away from home, but like still connected because they farm, right? So it definitely was a good fit for me. And I had no intentions of going into Greek life. Like it wasn't something where I was like, aspiring to be a sorority sister, all the things. In fact, like I really struggle with female friendships. It's something I've struggled with my whole life. And I like very introverted. I don't need a lot of social interaction to fill my cup. But when I got to Western and I saw all the promotional materials for Rush, and I was like, oh, this sounds exciting. And I would drive around and look at all the houses with the letters. And I'm like, I don't even know what that means. Like, I just want to be involved. And which was strange looking back, very outside of my comfort zone, but I was all about it. And I was so happy that I did. Greek, being a Chi Omega and having that experience, I still reference things. I still connect with my sisters today. I still have a lot of opportunities that come up because of that. It is a connection that I value. So
I love it. Well, it's a great organization led by some amazing people who I'm friends with. What's up, Leslie? So super happy that you had a chance to do that and go Chi Omega. Just an incredible organization. And now you've dedicated yourself to ending the stigma surrounding mental health and reaching out to as many struggling young people as possible with your story and your voice. Tell our audience, what's the best part of your job as a mental health speaker?
Oh my gosh, I get asked this all the time. Like, what's your favorite part of what you
Yeah.
do? And
Yeah.
there's so many amazing things, as you know, like there's nothing like being on stage, right?
Mhm.
There's nothing like it. It's a feeling that we chase, and it's wonderful for a lot of different reasons. It's a layered feeling, but the most amazing part about what we do are the conversations that we have with students off stage.
Yeah.
It's after they hear you speak, it's after they hear your story. I'm getting chills just talking about it because some of the conversations I've had, and I'm still friends with a lot of these students, and I've spoken for years, and just to be able to create space for them where they feel safe and seen just from connecting with you with your stories, you transformed them in that moment. And that's why we do what we do, is that conversation. And if I got on stage and got terrible reviews from 99% of the audience, but that one person came up to me with tears in their eyes and hugged me and told me their story and how this changed their life, then I know I did my job. Because it is about that one person, because that one person is going to go change the life of other people based on what they know. And absolutely everything I do for them. So that is the best part about what we do, is speaking with whoever you speak to, whether it's students or adults. Or I commend you if you speak to adults. I don't even speak that language. So I don't know how people do it, but those conversations, they're just next level. They're next level good.
Yeah, you and I are alike in so many different ways. We love the stage. We chase that high that we get on the stage, but also the conversations that we have are life-changing. And
Life
when
changing.
you are vulnerable on stage, you will get so many hooks where these students will hook in and they are with you every second and they can't wait to talk to you and take a selfie and get your book and do all of the things and follow you on social media and send you
Oh yeah.
DMs. All of these things happen, and it's great because of just one day you happen to be on stage on a college campus and they will remember you for the rest of their lives. I mean, literally.
I
So
know.
it's amazing. It's amazing to me. I mean, I still have, students who, saw me maybe 2 or 3 years ago and are
Mhm.
still raving about that. And they're like, oh, and they bring all their friends over to meet me. It's great.
I know. I love it. There's an event in Illinois that I spoke at years ago. I've worked with that organization and that decision maker so much. Like
Mhm.
we're good friends, and I just attend the event. And every time I attend, and it's been like these students are years removed now, but
Yeah.
like some of the group leaders that are there, they'll be like I walk in and they'll say, "Tell me more." Like I get Tell me more is a big part of my talk. It's like a huge thing, but I hear that all the time. I get emails from people that are like, just heard a student say, tell me more. And it was just amazing. And I'm like, and I'm just, in moments, no matter what your job is, friends, if you're listening to this, there is somebody's life that you are changing. And as long as you stay focused on them, like it's going to change your life. It's wild. I
I
love what
love
we
it.
do. It's wild.
It is wild. And you're not ready for this yet because this hasn't happened to you yet. But what happened to me was I was speaking on stage at my alma mater, and a kid came up to me from the audience afterwards. And the student said, "Hey, can we have a selfie?" And I'm like, "Sure." So he takes a selfie. And then after that, I'm like, "So what are you going to do with that photo?" And he goes, "I'm going to show it to my dad." And I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "Your dad?" I'm like, "Who's your dad?" And he goes, "Mike Barthold." And I'm like, "Mike Barthold?" I'm like, "He's my pledge brother in my fraternity." He goes, "Yeah, that's my dad." And I'm
Oh
like,
my word.
"No." I'm like, "No, I'm getting old."
You have hit that phase of life.
I really have. And it's going to happen to you too one day. I'm just preparing you so you're
Great. Sounds
ready.
good.
So, you also recently talked about all the moments that are not so great that we don't normally share on our social media highlight reels. One of them that I thought was really interesting about you was this panic attack that you had on a plane recently. Talk to our audience about what happened there and how do you handle moments like that when it happens?
Well, I want to go on record and saying it's exceptionally hard. So, like, I do believe that people want to share those moments on social, but oftentimes when we see people that do, they get ridiculed for it. Like we see a lot of people, which first of all, don't care if you get ridiculed if you feel like it's going to help someone post it, obviously. But it's just like in the moment, I don't think of those things. I don't think to like, oh, I should film this, right? Or I should take a picture of this and share this. Even with good intent, my brain is just not focused there, right? So I commend the people that do, but in this particular situation, I was definitely coming down from it. And I was like, I had a fleeting thought and I'm like, I should just turn the camera on because people need to know that this happens and that this is so uncomfortable and terrible. And I did. So it was just like it was a terrible clip, but it was happening. And I was like, people need to know. So what actually happened was so ridiculous. And I can say that because it happened to me. Like if it happened to you, I'm not going to say it's ridiculous, right? But the response I had to something so seemingly simple is what I wanted to highlight because I feel like what causes you anxiety may not cause me anxiety and vice versa. Like how we cope with it's going to be different. But this was so simple, something so incredibly small, but it just was just the straw that broke the camel's back. I had had a very long week of events. I was exhausted. I'm very introverted. So I really needed that time to just be quiet and decompress. I had my noise canceling headphones on, like all the things. And I was just zoning out. I was in a really safe space mentally. And the stewardess, all she did was tap my shoulder because she needed to like see if I wanted water, you know what they do going through. And I don't even know if I had my eyes closed. I don't remember that moment. But when she tapped my shoulder, something happened like physiologically. And I like literally like felt, you know how you get that lump in your throat when you're about to cry?
Oh,
I
yeah.
felt that through my whole upper body. Like something was just boiling over and I snapped. And I was just like, and then it just all happened. And of course, it's really humiliating in like a public setting like that. But you always feel better afterwards. I always tell people move through it, like just move through it, like you're safe and all the things. And I knew it would stop, but it was just wild that it was just something so seemingly insignificant. And I like to highlight those moments because I think sometimes people feel like something's wrong with them if they have a response like that to something so simple, but sometimes that's just life and we have to move through it and give yourself grace and forgiveness in those moments because, just because it happened that one time doesn't mean it will again, but it was just wild when it happened. But
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that because I know it's happening to our listeners as well. And so, yeah, I mean, this kind of stuff happens. We don't share it on social media very often, but it does happen, and we should talk about that. And you and I are like twins. Like I'm also super
I do
introverted.
look like you, right?
You
Like we
do,
kind of
you
look
do. We
similar.
do kind of look like brother and sister. And like we are identical in that, we are actually introverts. We are speakers who are introverts. And I know to our listeners that's like super weird, but for us, like it totally makes sense. And we'll get on the airplane, go to a gig, and we'll have like our headphones on and we want to like tune out the world. So that scenario, like that's exactly where I'm in my headspace when I enter a plane. So I understand what you're talking about completely. It makes total sense to me. And I'm glad that you shared it. The other thing too is that when we see each other at conferences or at events, and somebody is always saying, "Hey, how you doing?" And then the natural response is, "I'm fine," right? And what's interesting about you and your program is like you like to press back and you like to say, "Tell me
Me
more."
more.
Why is that a good response to this common question that we get of "How are you doing?"
Oh my goodness, I'm fine is such a cop out answer for for me, for everybody. And I always challenge the audience and I'm like, how many of you have ever said I'm fine, but that wasn't the case? And every single hand in the room comes up. So here's my point is I would rather press back every time, even if it is fine in the moment. If it's fine, it's fine. Great. But like everyone here just told me that that's not always the case, right? So I think we say I'm fine for a lot of different reasons. We don't want to burden people with our problems or, people aren't going to understand how we feel. So what's the point in talking about it? Or whatever other lie is just going around in your head, which is just meant to isolate you, to keep you from having these conversations. Because when we talk about how we feel, the less power these things have over us. So with pressing back, with I'm fine, I'm fine. How are you? Good. We've closed the door, right? We've closed the door to conversation, doors closed, opportunity gone. But when we say, tell me more, it actually, you know what that does to someone's brain? It does two things. It shows them, oh my gosh, this person actually cares about how I'm feeling, whether I'm fine or not. So we subconsciously think that. And then also it creates an open door. It opens a loop versus saying something very like where we close the door with I'm fine or I'm good. How are you? Door closed. Tell me more is like, hey, I've opened this door. Now you can feel free to share whatever you want. And then what's really cool is if they do start sharing, then you can keep pressing back with tell me more, like just repeating that phrase over and over. And it doesn't just create space for somebody else, it trains somebody how to actively listen. So you're also, training your own brain that I don't have to offer advice. I don't have to have the answers. I can just create space for somebody and help them unburden themselves of their problems and maybe get down to the root. So the example I like to use too is like, especially with young people, young adults, college students, high school students, there's this overwhelming fear of failure. Fear of failure is real. Everybody will raise their hand. I have a fear of failing, but I guarantee you that looks different for everybody else. So fear of failure is like the high level view. But if I'm like, okay, well, tell me more. And then they're like, one person may talk about their experience as a leader in Greek life. Somebody might talk about their experience on a test for this class or getting into this major or getting into grad school. And then we keep dissecting with tell me more, we actually might get down to maybe it's not a fear of failure at all. It's actually something else. So it's an exercise to help them kind of identify also, what to target in their behavior or their mental and emotional health, what they need to work on versus just this overwhelming sense of failure or I'm fine. So tell me more just offers an ability to create space and hold space. And what's funny is I got an email a few weeks back from like one of the adults that was at an event a few months ago. And she was like, I want to let you know I started utilizing Tell Me More with my husband, completely changed the way we communicate. And I'm like, ah, because you just go home from work and you're like, oh, work was good. How was work for you? Oh, good. What's for you? Oh, da, 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 da. But when we could press back and show that we care and then offer people the ability to communicate, it's just wild to see. It's such a simple thing. And I actually do this, in my talks at the beginning, we do this whole exercise where I have them go through this process and they don't know that's what I'm doing till later, right? When I close the loop, but it's really cool to see them start to have this conversation. And that's what I typically hear from students when they see me again. They're like, Brittany, how are things going? Tell me more. It's like this thing, but I'm so glad it sticks in their brain. Those
Yeah.
three words can just be a game changer for people.
I love it. And I love it. That's what people know you for. And then they bring it back to you, which is great because then you know they're a fan, right?
Right.
Which is great, which is so, so great. The other thing that you talk about too is this number one lie that mental health struggles will tell us is you're alone. So why is you're alone? Why is that a big lie?
Well, like I said before, mental and emotional health struggles seek to do one thing, and that's isolate us, keep us isolated, whether it's physically, mentally, emotionally, all the things. Keep us, again, I'm fine. Like, I don't need to talk to somebody how I feel. It's not going to matter. They're not going to understand. There's so many things like that that keep us in isolation. And I push back with that too, because I think the number one thing we tell ourselves is, they're not going to understand. So what's the point? And that may be true, but they may not understand, but we need to really push back on that. That's just more isolation too. So the lies that the anxiety tells you are like, you're alone, you're not good enough, you're a failure, all this negative self-talk that we really just embody as part of who we are. So that's part of the lie for isolation. And then it isolates you by saying talking to somebody has no purpose because they're not going to understand. You're going to burden them. You're just whining and complaining, right? More isolation. It really seeks to keep us isolated because that's where it thrives. Once it has hold of you, it can really, really work its magic, if you will. And then that can be detrimental in the long term, like it was for me. But when we talk about how we feel, we really take away the power that it has over us. So no wonder it wants to keep us isolated because that's where it holds the power. So it's all about taking the power back and taking ownership over your mental and emotional health. And I really want to push back to anybody listening that maybe is like, oh, yeah, well, people do not have to understand how you feel in order to help you. And that was a big aha moment for me because I think I really wanted people to know, like, you're not going to get it. Like, you just don't get it. But think about the people you love. Do you want them to feel how you feel? It's not good. Like, I don't want people to understand all this. I don't need people to understand how I feel in order to help me. And that's where the ownership piece comes in. So it all just comes down to really when I'm working with students and we're going through a lot of these things and I have them raise their hand multiple times in this process, it's just literally in real time proof that you're not alone. And at this last event I did, we talked about talking to somebody and I was like, raise your hand if you believe that talking to somebody would help you. And every hand went up. And I was like, okay, we can all agree. Now, how many of you are actually talking to somebody? No hands went up. And I was like, but we all just agreed that it helps. Why aren't you doing it? And then we got to well, they're not going to get it, or I don't know how. So my big thing is giving them the tools on how to start talking and creating space because we can talk about the ways to overcome anxiety and depression. We can do this, but we can't get there unless we start talking first. So.
Mhm. I love your approach. It's really beautiful. Really, really nice. And I see your debut book there in the background, Lies My Anxiety Has Told Me, which is now a bestseller. So congratulations on all of that.
Thank
What
you.
would our listeners learn by picking up your book?
Well, first of all, that they're not alone. I think the number one like review that I see on Amazon is I
Mhm.
felt like she was just sitting with me having a conversation. That's really important to me. Some of the best personal and professional development books I've ever read felt like they were just a conversation versus someone talking at me.
Mhm.
So that was like the biggest compliment I got with the book. But really to feel seen, right? That you're not alone. I talk about some of the bigger things that cause me anxiety, but some of the small insignificant things. And I want to show them that just because it's small and insignificant doesn't mean that it's not significant to you. And we really have to get out of our heads that, if we see someone struggling, like, oh, that shouldn't cause you anxiety. Like, what's wrong with you? It's like, well, this does. It may not cause you anxiety, but so the other big takeaway is how to start taking ownership over your mental and emotional health. There's a big part in the book that I state, my anxiety is nobody else's problem but my own. And there's so much freedom in that.
Mhm.
Like, I do not expect other people to adjust their life to accommodate to make mine easier. And actually, when we take ownership and we start to identify the things that we need and what we can advocate for ourselves, like we have control because anxiety makes you feel out of control, right? But there are ways to take back control that make people feel empowered. So that's the goal.
Really, really good stuff. One of the things that makes you very unique is you have this tangible symbol of your talk. It's called Becoming an Overcomer, and you
Yeah.
bring a 50-foot rope. You invite all the students to participate in a
Yeah.
lively game of tug of war. So, what is the significance of this activity that you do?
You know, it's funny. It doesn't matter if I do it with high school students or college students. Everybody loves tug of war. Like it's wild. Like the first time I did it with college students, I was like, oh, they're probably gonna think this is a little kiddish, you know, like maybe they won't be into it. But like the dudes were like, this is my moment. Like they were like so excited. And I'm like, all right, like we're doing this. So I do it everywhere. Unless like, you know, when I'm meeting with event planners, if it just doesn't fit, I have a different ending, but it's a nice way to end because the points that I make in the talk, you know, feeling alone, you know, isolation, I always reference a tug of war. I'm like, can you win tug of war with 1 to 5 people? And some people, of course, some people are like, yeah, I can do it. And I'm like, okay, for like 5 minutes or 5 seconds, you could probably do it, but I'm talking long term. But it's a really cool visual where we actually walk. We have one student against four. We don't actually do it then, but it's a good visual for me to say, you know, you're alone in this and this is what you're battling. These are the things we're going to put in place to help you. And that's what I talk about. And then we build it out and we actually watch this happen. So it's a really cool way for them to not only just hear me, but see what I'm saying and kind of visualize that and put that together. So then that'll be stuck in their brain forever. You know, when they hear tug of war, they'll think back to that. So it's just building those pieces and showing you how you can, you know, combat mental and emotional health issues not alone, right? We don't want to do it alone. It's not a badge of honor to do it alone. So
That's a great metaphor and something they would remember forever, definitely. I mean, you're dragging this 50-foot rope on the plane with you. Does it have its like
you
own suitcase?
listen, it has its own suitcase. It's a little, and I got to carry it on because and I always check my other bag, right? Because I'm like,
Right.
if I lose everything, I can't lose the rope because then I'm really like, this is not gonna work. But every time I go through TSA, people just like, I see the reaction as it's going through the thing, and sometimes it's like, I'm
What
like,
in the world?
I'm like, please don't take this. Like, I need it. So, it's a good time. It's a good
They're like,
time.
what weird activity are you interested in, Brittany? Because I'm seeing the contents of your suitcase, and that's weird.
I know you should hear me try to explain it. Hi, I'm a speaker and I do tug of war. This is my rope. Please don't take it. Like, please don't take it.
Please don't take it. I need this to make a living, please. I love it. This has been so much fun. And I love your approach. I just think it's so refreshing and it makes total sense. And now, even though I've never actually seen your program, I can completely envision it. And I understand now why you're in such high demand. I understand exactly why, which is fantastic. Now, my weakness is good food. Okay. I like to eat well when I am on the road.
Same.
So where do you go for a great meal in Green Valley, Illinois?
I was cracking up because I was like, Green Valley, like I live in the middle of a cornfield. So,
Yeah. So where
I
do you
mean,
go?
we could walk across the street and get some sweet corn and then like put it in the microwave. That's probably about all the good you're gonna get. But we do have, I'm in a town of about 600 people. We do have a gas station, okay, because like the
Okay.
farmers need it. And it's called Casey's. I'm sure you've heard of it. If you haven't, it's really popular in the Midwest. Like Casey's is
Mhm.
known for its pizza and it's gas. That's what they call it. So it's a pizza store that also happens to be a gas station, is what they say. They have really great pizza, like 100%, like really
Really
great
good
pizza. And
pizza. Now, I was born in Manhattan. Okay. Is this going to be really good pizza for me too?
listen, every pizza, okay, hold on. I'm like a pizza connoisseur, and you can't compare like New York style pizza to like Chicago deep dish style. Like you get
Right. Totally different.
or Detroit style or you know, Casey's or Pizza Hut or they're all a different vibe. Like you just can't compare. But if you just want good pizza, you go to Casey's. Listen, I don't got any options, okay? Like I got
That's
to drive
true.
40 minutes to get to the next town. So
I mean, but deep dish pizza in Chicago, that's a casserole. It's not even really pizza. I feel like it's a whole different category.
my friends live in Buffalo, and when they came here and had Chicago pizza, they were like, "What is this? This is not real pizza."
This is
And
heresy. That's what this is.
I'm like, yours isn't real pizza. It's a flat piece of cardboard with a little bit of cheese on it. At least I have cheese here. I
Well,
love
see,
cheese.
listen, you're talking to University at Buffalo grad. So at Buffalo, they do have good pizza, but it is different than New York City and it's different than deep dish. They have really good pepperoni where it like cups, and that's a really good pepperoni
The
in Buffalo.
cups are good. The
The
little cup
cups are,
things.
oh, wow. When you see that, you're like, oh, this is going to be a good slice of pizza right here.
That's true. That's valid. That's valid.
All right. So, if our college student listeners, if they want to bring you in to speak on their college campus about mental health, where should they go to connect with you?
Well, it's very simple. My website is so on the nose. It's brittanyrichmond.com, or my Instagram is the Brittany Richmond. I have a LinkedIn, but that's boring. Come on, friends. LinkedIn is so boring. Let's go someplace fun like Instagram, okay? But the website is probably the best, brittanyrichmond.com. So
Fantastic. BrittanyRichmond.com, or go to Instagram for all the fun posts. That's where I follow Brittany. It's the Brittany Richmond. And thank you so much for sharing all this great information with us today. Our show is better and our listeners are better because of your words. So thank you.
I appreciate you, friend. Thank you for having me.
Of course, to our listeners, if you enjoyed this talk with Brittany, I want you to like it and I want you to share it with other college students that need to talk about mental health on their college campus. Thanks so much for listening today, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Bye for now.